Hey, good morning. This is Doug Smith, DHS Realty broker owner, and it's about 8:14 on a Sunday morning. Kind of dreary out. Later today, I'm going over with an agent to help him list a home. Unheard of as a broker owner, but I'm in the trenches with my agents. Actually, I'm bringing a sign and a key box, and going to be side by side with him. So excited about 2 o'clock. Headed over to Royce City to be able to. Be in the trenches with him and pitch a tent next to him as he writes up an offer. Hey, today's training is going to start effectively right now at 8:15. It's going to be 15 minutes or less on what every paragraph in the contract relates to, but it's going to be like a broad brush. I'm going to tell you what time it is, not how the clock's made. This is an actual offer I made with a client. I took out my buyer's name. I did leave the seller's name in because that's public record on the tax roll. I've told everybody in our company, any company I've ever been with, any company I ever recruited for, I've said that the only two things you need when you write an offer up is the agent full report and the tax roll. You put them on each side of your computer, and then you obviously need a pre-approval letter because you've got to know how to write the financing in this contract. So with those three things, you're locked and loaded. Agent full report, tax roll on each side of your computer, and you have a pre-approval letter. You open up your zip forms. When you open up zip forms, the only button you hit is new. You'll go ahead and hit new. You'll have 5 boxes. You're only concerned with the first 3. It'll say seller, listing, it'll say buyer, purchase, or it'll say lease. Under this scenario, we're going over a contract like we work for a buyer. You'd pick buyer. You'd name it. Right underneath naming it, you would select a little dot next to residential. And then a little further down, you would see select a template. You'd pick a template. That would be a buyer template. You'd hit save. The next screen, you're going to see a white summary square. You'll go 2 tabs over to documents, and boom, you'll see all the forms that I have already pre-filled, 26 forms in total, and you'll look for the 1 to 4 family contract. When you open it, you're going to look at paragraph 1. You look at the tax roll, you put the seller's name. You look at the pre-approval, and you put the buyer's name. Let's say the buyer's name was Daffy, like I'll cap it when I write an offer, Daffy Duck. And let's say that Donald Duck was the husband. Now, brings up a good point. Why'd I put the wife first? Well, sometimes it doesn't matter, but sometimes there is an order, and you want to always make sure that the client's happy with the way the order is. So you would just say, hey, I'm going to put Donald and Daffy, and maybe Daffy goes, no, I want to be first. So it doesn't matter. Just make sure that the client's happy. Okay. You're going to go to paragraph 2. It's simply the legal description. You're going to look at the tax roll. You're going to read it. I know an instructor that says just read the book, and sometimes that is the key. You just got to read the contract, read the tax roll. It will say somewhere lot 5, block J. It'll say the subdivision, which is the same thing as the addition. It'll say the city and the county and then the address. Sometimes it doesn't say the lot and block. Well, if it doesn't say it, don't put it, but be sure it doesn't say it for sure. Sometimes a subdivision isn't as easy as Heritage Village. So I sometimes just copy and paste the legal description, put it right there. But remember, when it says blank addition, that means blank subdivision. You scroll down, look at the listing. That's why you have it next to you on the computer. Right around the remarks section, it sometimes says exclusions. In this scenario, the agent full report said all draperies. I just copy and pasted it. When I copied and pasted it, I put it right there in paragraph 2D. That's for exclusions. Paragraph 3 is always going to be templated with a third-party financing addendum. There's only 3 types of financing addendums. They're listed right there. Probably aren't going to be using loan assumption for a while. Seller financing would be when there's no mortgage. But most people go third-party. That's going to encompass conventional, FHA, Texas Veteran Loan Board, VA, reverse mortgages, USDA. So we template that because most of the time that's what you have. You can see here that the buyer's going conventional. That's more than 10% down at 335. So we were offering 335,000. The home was listed at 299. He was putting over 10% down, so you can see that. That's going to be conventional most of the time. FHA's down payment is 3.5%. But again, you want to look at the pre-approval letter. I've known buyers put 50% down FHA because of financing issues like high credit or high debt score or low credit score. Okay, so you just want to have that pre-approval letter. You're going to scroll down, paragraph 5. Paragraph 5 is going to talk about the earnest and the option. Now, I always like to use the title company the listing agent wants to use because we're in that kind of market. So I asked the listing agent and they said, put this title company in. That's talking about the earnest and the option. So you got it right there. Buyer within 3 days to deliver to the title company, comma, as the escrow agent at the address, $5,000 earnest money and blank as the option. We template usually $100 for 10 days. I changed it to $250. You go 2 paragraphs down and you'll see 5 days. That's where you could have 10. You could have 3. I put 5. It's negotiable. Okay, that's it on that paragraph. Okay, that's it. Just remember, 5,000 as earnest. You've got to read the contract and blank dollar as the option. Both of them are negotiable. I like to tell the buyer the only way they'll ever see that 250 is if they go to closing. If they don't go to closing, they won't see that 250. Doesn't matter. Whoever's fault it is that the home doesn't close, you lose the 250. They should get the 5,000 back as a down payment, and we know it's applied first towards down payment. Okay? Scroll down, paragraph 6. It's what the title company does. Most of the time, the seller pays the title, but in this market, you better be having the buyer pay it if you want a competitive offer. That's all it says there. Paragraph 6A, who's going to pay the title policy? You're going to use the same title company that was in paragraph 5, right up here. Okay? Don't make it 2 different paragraphs. We never have a human being, so don't write the earnest money goes to Joe Blow as escrow agent because we don't write a check to an individual. So make it the same title company in 5 that's in 6. Then you just have to decide whether the seller or the buyer is paying title. Title is about 1%, little less, but I just use that. It makes you look like a hero because it'll be less than 1%. This says amended and shortages, amended as to read shortages in the area. That's talking about survey. Title insurance does not cover survey shortages. If the surveyor has a bad day and they screw the pooch on doing your survey, you're going to have an insurance. Just put buyer. It's not that expensive, $80 or 120, something like that. You go to the page 3. A lot of things on page 3. Number 1 is the top paragraph, the thickest. There's only 3. The small paragraphs say either the buyer's going to pay a survey or the seller's going to pay it. In this market, I'd go ahead and mark this paragraph, go ahead and put 10 days, and delete everything in this paragraph, okay? But if you want to keep it, then keep it. It's a negotiation. If the seller has a survey, then mark this paragraph. If you don't know if the seller has a survey and you want to get the offer in, mark buyer. If they have the survey, then you can just tell the title company not to order the survey. But you can go ahead and mark this paragraph too, and that means the buyer is paying the survey, okay? And then you can always find out if the seller has it, and you can stop the survey from being ordered at the title company. But you got to be communicative with the title company. If you can't reach the agent, then that's what you'll pick, paragraph 2. If the agent says that the seller agent, that the seller has it, then leave it the way we template it, which is this, okay? Don't touch anything else. You're going to go all the way down to the middle of the page. Either the home has an HOA or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then you have to physically uncheck mark it does because I template it does because most homes have HOAs, okay? That's going to be looking at the agent full report. It'll say there is or isn't an HOA that's mandatory. From there, it's crazy. You go to paragraph 7. Paragraph 7, you either have the seller's disclosure or you don't. If you don't have it, then mark the second box. But in this market, I would argue that you should get in touch with a listing agent, make sure that you do get it so that you don't give your buyer an extra right to terminate because the seller doesn't want to look at a buyer that has an extra right to terminate because they don't have the seller's disclosure. Remember, your advocacy is for the buyer to get the home, where in maybe 2 years ago, you might have wanted to not have the seller's disclosure to give your buyer a 7-day right to terminate. You can't do that anymore. You got to try to eliminate the rights to terminate eliminate them, make them as short as possible to make your offer competitive. So you either have the disclosure or you don't. There's 11 exceptions to a seller not having to fill out a seller's disclosure. I know some brokers think there's only 3, but there's 11. Remember that. And if there's no seller's disclosure, that could be an estate sale, a foreclosure. It could be some type of government sale, a tax auction sale. It could also be a previously unoccupied new home. It could be a property co-owned together where one party's selling it to the other, but they live there together. And obviously it can be an estate. So you want to make sure that either there is or isn't a disclosure. And if you don't need one, then you mark this third box. But most of the time, it's going to be either 1 or 2. If it's 2, put 3 days in there to get the disclosure back from the seller agent. Going to go to 7D, Delta. Always mark as is in this marketplace. Don't ask for any repairs. Down to paragraph 7H. Well, I usually template $7,000 to $1,000 in there. You're going to go ahead and want to delete that. That's an optional home warranty that the seller is going to cover. The title company purchases it in the buyer's name, but the seller reimburses the buyer at closing. We usually like $700. Leave it blank. You might have to pay it, or the buyer, in order to get this offer, because it's a very competitive marketplace. If there's a relationship between you and the buyer, and this is a buyer, I'm a buyer's agent under this scenario, and you can read right there that there's only 3 reasons you have to put somebody, or 4, you put somebody's name there: a spouse, parent, or child, or a business entity where the agent or the broker has a 10% or more ownership. Okay, so spouse, parent, or child, you put it right there. Buyer is related to buyer's agent. Closing date, paragraph 9, you just click on it and you're going to pick a date. Obviously, you got to negotiate that. You got to make sure the seller's okay with it. You got to make sure the lender can do it. And you got to make sure your buyer's okay with it. It's negotiable. You scroll down to paragraph 10. Well, there's either going to be a lease or the buyer's going to move in the day of closing. That's if the buyer moves in the day of closing. You would mark according to closing and funding. If the buyer was going to let the seller stay in there, you'd mark according to a temporary lease. Okay, so it depends. It's negotiation. Ask the listing agent if the seller needs to stay in any longer. Go down to paragraph 11, leave it blank. No reason to put anything in there. Paragraph 12, in this market, it'll be blank. You're not going to be asking the seller to pay any closing costs for your buyer. They're getting too many offers. From paragraph 12, you're going to go all the way to paragraph 21. Paragraph 21, you're already going to have your email in here at the top because I've templated your email if you're in our company. You'll put the buyer's email in the last line. Okay? You'll put the buyer's email in the last line. From there, you go to paragraph 22. You got to do some thinking in this paragraph. You've got to attach every addendum that you're sending over. So under this one, I did third-party financing. I did an HOA addendum because there was one. We waived the appraisal up to $10,000 below the offer price, and we had a temporary lease. So if you're going to have a temporary lease, you're going to mark paragraph 10 and 22. If you're going to have third-party financing, you're going to mark it. If you're going to have an addendum for HOA, you're going to go to page 3 in the middle, and not only are you going to unmark that there is no HOA, but you're going to unmark this third box because I template that. It's already pre-marked. So does that make sense? On page 3, you're going to either need to keep it marked and mark this, or unmark it and unmark this, because you're not going to show you have an addendum for HOA when there's not one. And then the addendum for sale, the addendum concerning right to terminate. I'm going to go over that in just a second. If you have a non-realty addendum, you put it right here. You type it in, non-realty. Don't type anything here that's already marked here. So I don't want to see here appraisal waiver. It's already over here. Mark it there. Okay, so you got to read. You got to read. It's got to be some common sense in real estate. That's really all it is, that and meeting people. The rest I'll help you with. I'll be in the trenches. Pitch a tent next to you. From there, you're going to go all the way to the last page. The last page, the left side, it's already pre-filled. All you got to do is fill out this side in the same length. All the answers are on what? The agent full report. The agent full report. Every single one of these blanks I filled in on the right are on the agent full report. Everything on the left is already pre-filled, so it's going to be super simple. Don't go any further down than city, state, and zip on the right. From there, you save it. Real quick, I'm going to open up the appraisal waiver so we can go over it, make sure everybody's on the same page. Now, the appraisal waiver, fairly new term, or a fairly new addendum. There's 3 boxes. Don't even have to cover the 3rd box right now in this marketplace. It's either going to be the 1st box or the 2nd box. Nothing hurts reading a form to help explain it. At the very top, it says it's not used for FHA or VA, period. So don't use it. That means it's really only going to be for conventional. The buyer says to you, I want the home. You're going in at $300,000. The home is listed for $250,000. So it was listed for $250,000. You're going in at $300,000. You don't care about the list price anymore. All we care about is whatever is in 3C on the contract. On 3C is the offer price. You've put $300,000. The buyer looks at you and says, I want it. I don't care what it appraises for. You say to the buyer, so what you're telling me is if the home appraises for $1, you're willing to bring $299,999 to increase the down payment to still equal the sales price. The buyer looks at you and says, that's exactly what I'm saying. Then you mark waiver 1. That means that whatever the home appraises for, the buyer will increase the down payment to still equal whatever is in 3C. The buyer looks at you and says, hey, I know it's listed at $250,000. I know we're going in at $300,000. So you don't care about the list price anymore. All we're talking about is the offer price. But the buyer says, I can't bring up more than $10,000 if the home doesn't appraise. You're going to mark paragraph 2 and you're going to put $290 because he just said, or she did, that they can only come up with $10,000 if the home doesn't appraise. We don't care anymore about what it's listed at. Whatever you go in at as a sales price, as an offer price, he or she, the buyer, says, I can only come up with $10,000 to still equal the sales price. Well, if you went in at $300,000, subtract $10,000, you're at $290,000. What that means is if the home appraises for $290,000, he's going to increase, or she will, the $10,000 to still equal 3C, the $300,000. If it comes in at $289,000, then you can negotiate and see if the seller wants to lower the price by that dollar to get to $290,000, and then the buyer will pay the difference. But the buyer has a right to back out, okay? And they'll get their earnest money back. All right, that's it. So that's paragraph 2. We've covered paragraph 1. Don't worry about paragraph 3 right now. Remember that you cannot use this on FHA or VA, okay? All right, that concludes the training for today. I like to keep it at about 15 minutes for attention span. There's no reason in this marketplace that you have to do a training for an hour and a half or an hour. Get your point across so you guys can get out there and go get some. Be safe. Have a great Sunday.